Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to continue with the subsection about Chittaja Rupas. Last time we discussed mainly what are the Chittas that can produce Chittaja Rupas and why do they get that capacity. So there were altogether 75 consciousness that has the capacity of producing mind-body matter, and they get the capacity based on their strength. And we also emphasized that week that Chitta are stronger. We also discussed that the Chitta Chitta is capable or stronger during its period or phase of genesis, arising, than their existing or persisting or vanishing moments. Because due to gaining all the necessary supports for the mentality. Then, but in the case of Rūpa is more stronger during its persisting phase than the genesis and vanishing, because all the necessary supports Rūpa gain at the during the moment of persisting, Titi Kala. Then we also discussed that Chitta is capable. Actually, it is not a single Chitta. It's not the Chitta only which produces Chittaja Rupas, but the entire mental cluster, the Chittupada, together with the mentalities, all together in a combination produce Chittaja Rupas. Out of the mentalities, Chitta is foremost in producing Chittaja Rupas. There is no argument in that. And then, apart from Chitta, the 5 jhana factors do have a big role in Chitta-born matter production. Then, because if any Chitta doesn't contain jhanangas, that Chitta is incapable of producing Chittaja Rupas, especially when it is lacking vitakka in the Kama-vachara sphere. But in the jhanas, yes, without vitakka, Chittas are capable of producing Chittaja Rupas. It's the absence of vitakka is not due to any other reason. That is because of the development of the mind. Then Chetana also plays a huge role in producing Chittaja Rupas. That is obviously seen in our intentional bodily movements. When we move our body with intention, we do. It is done with the help of the Chittaja Rupas that are produced in the body, and those Chittaja Rupas gain the capacity of moving this physical body due to being stronger of a Chetana, of a powerful Chetana, which we call Javana Chetanas or the Avajjana Chetana. So Chetana also has a huge influence in the nature of the Chittaja Rupas that are produced by the Chitta Chetasikas. So Chetana plays a huge role, Jhanangas plays a prominent role, Chitta itself plays a prominent role. So that's what we have discussed so far, how Chittaja Rupas are produced. Yeah, in terms of if you look into this objectively, yes, how could an immaterial, non-extended reality produces something that is extended, something that consumes space, something has a shape or some material stuff? That's a very tough question to answer. That is one of the reasons why many philosophers evade dualism and move into materialism, because the problem of interaction. But in general sense, we all believe that there's no doubt that there is a consciousness, that there is no doubt about consciousness, because more you try to deny the existence of consciousness, it starts to prove. Because even though if someone may argue that there is no Rūpa, it's just a illusion or a virtual reality that we are experiencing, but still the nature of knowing something, the action of consciousness is surely visible, surely can be experienced. There's no doubt about that. So therefore, there's no doubt whether that the chitta exists, but the question in the world is whether it's a material, is an outcome of the material things, or is it a separate different element. In Buddhism, we consider it as a separate different element which has the capacity to influence the Rūpa, which is difficult to be explained in terms of normal understanding or like scientific evidences or logically how could this happen. That's the thing. Now that's a different case. That's a different thing that we shall discuss when it comes to the consciousness. I'll be giving some lectures about these philosophical points. Now we move into the chittas. Now we know that there are 75 chittas that can produce chitta rupas. Now among the 75 there are few exceptional cases. That is consciousnesses that arise as the rebirth linking patisandhi chittas do not produce chittaja rupas. That is one exception. And then according to some scholars like Mulatika, the death consciousness, chuti chitta, does not produce chittaja rupas. Does not produce. Among the 75, there are exceptional cases. Then things that are excluded from the 89 and the number 75 was achieved by removing 4 arupa vipaka and then dipancha viññāna, 10 viññāna. So why they are excluded? That's another topic that we have to discuss. Then even the 75 chittas that are capable of producing chittaja rupas do it only when they are arising in the 5 panchabokara realm. In the realm where all 5 aggregates are found. Like in the Kama and Rūpavachara realms, Kamavachara and Rūpavachara realms, not in Arupavachara realms. So what is the reason behind this? So these things have to be clarified. So today my attempt is to explain why patisandhi chittas and chuti chittas do not produce chittaja rupas according to some Buddhist scholars. But I have to mention the commentaries have a different opinion regarding the chuti chitta. All are unanimously agreed on the opinion that patisandhi chittas do not produce chittaja rupa, mind-born matter. Yes, it arises together with kamaja rupas. That is also a unanimously agreed point based on the evidence of the p a t t h a n a, information in the p a t t h a n a. But regarding production of chittaja rupas by the chuti chitta, the death consciousness, there are few different opinions. The commentators, Abhidhamma commentary states that it's only the dead chitta of an arahant that does not produce chittaja rupas. Dead consciousness of non-arahants have the capacity to produce chittaja rupas. That is the opinion of the commentary. It's very clearly stated. But the Mulatika suggests that no, it is all the consciousness of all the beings, a death consciousness of all the beings, the last consciousness of a life, in a life, of all the beings are not capable of producing chittaja rupas. Then Anutika further extends this idea and says all the last 17 consciousness in a one life is not capable of producing chittaja rupa. So these are the 3 different opinions, and our attempt is not to prove anything based on the doctrinal information, but to find out the reasons why these scholars say so, and that would gives us another better picture about how matter is influencing rupa. So we are now here talking about consciousness. Matter is influencing chitta actually. We are talking here about a point or a concept where consciousness is producing material stuff. Consciousness is producing materials. It's not affecting the materiality. It's about producing. New material is happening due to consciousness. That's the concept that we are, that's a concept which is in discussion at the moment. So then, the capacity of the consciousness. Why such consciousness are capable of that? So we have already discussed few points. Now, today we are going to discuss why how a certain consciousness is gaining the support from its base, the rupa that it is associating. So its outcome, production of Rupas, how it affects the production of its Rupa. So we'll go into the board and to have a better understanding on this issue. So our topic in discussion is Chittaja Rupa. Chittaja Rupa. Now today we are going to discuss about the points why Patisandhi Chitta and Chutti Chitta do not produce Chittaja Rupa. The better question will be, the correct question will be, why don't Patisandhi Chitta and Chutti Chitta produce Chittaja Rupa? That is grammatically correct English. Anyway, I hope you got the idea here. Now, so far we know Chitta plus Cetasikas produces Chittaja Rupa. Right? Due to this, Chittaja Rupas arises. Why the Chitta has the capacity to do so? That is, one is Chitta, the second is Jhana factors. Another prominent factor, but all Chitta Cetasikas are involved in this production, but Chetana plays a huge role. Chetana, right? Chetana plays a huge role, right? And this happens during the arising moment. Arising moment of the Chittupada. Arising moment of the Chittupada. So that's what we have discussed so far. And we excluded, based on these facts, some facts, we excluded 10 vijnana. Why we excluded arupa vipaka chittas, we haven't discussed so far. That will be discussed later. And then also all these chittas, Chittaja Rupas arise only in Panchavokara. Only in Panchavokara realms. Only in Panchavokara realm. That's another point. That we shall discuss later. The reason is, if I give a short explanation on this, during the existing period, Pavattikala, for Chittaja Rupas to happen, there should be a Kammaja Rupa generation that has already started for the Chittas to produce Chittaja Rupas. It's like, in order for the Chitta to produce a Chittaja Rupa, there should be an already existing generation of Kammaja Rupas. So it shows that the Karmaja Rupas that have already exist gives a certain necessity, is a requirement, is a certain requirement for the Chittaja Rupas to happen. So likewise, we can see all the causes here. That we shall do after gathering all. When we come to the topic of causality, yes, we shall be examining them in detail. Right? All these subtle points even. Now these are the few things that we have discussed so far. Now, in that sense, we have 75 chittas that can produce Chittaja Rupa. 75 chittas. Out of the 75, we are going to exclude Patisandhi, minus Patisandhi Chitta. Then we are going to minus Chutti Chitta. And we are going to discuss now why is that. Why is that? There are altogether 19 chittas that has the capacity that can arise as Chutti Chitta and Patisandhi Chitta. That is something that we normally study in Abhidhamma. Like we shall discuss them when we come to the Nama chapter actually. Altogether there are 19 Patisandhi Chittas. And those chittas also become the 19 Chuti chittas. They also become the bhavanga as well, but bhavanga is not a topic under this issue, because all bhavangas in the Panchavokara realm produce chittaja rupas at any time, all the time. There's no problem in it, right? The Patisandhi and Chuti are the issues. What are these 19? We have these 19 with 2 Upekka Santirana. I'm not going to explain what these consciousness are. Then 8 Mahāvipāka, 5 Rūpa Vachara Vipāka, and 4 Arupa Vachara Vipāka. So these are the 19. 19. They arise as Patisandhi and also Chuti. If any consciousness arises as the Patisandhi Chitta in a certain life, that same consciousness will become the Chuti Chitta. That is not to say that the Chuti Chitta determines the next life. No. What determines the next life is the karma that gets the opportunity at the death moment. Chuti Chitta is just terminating the life. It's the final consciousness of this life. That is not a reason to decide which realm we are going into. The fact that decides our next rebirth is the karma, the latent karma that got the opportunity to give a result. If it was an akusala karma, the rebirth would happen in a woeful realm, and if it was a kusala karma, it would have happened. It would happen in a blissful realm. The nature of the Chuti Chitta has no whatsoever influence to the next life. It has no influence at all. So that's also an otherwise. When we say the same Pachitta perform the Patisandhi, Bhavanga and Chuti functions, the obvious question that arises in the mind is, how could a person who is born in a good realm be born in a bad realm afterwards? Because Chuti Chitta is surely, if you are born in a blissful realm, Patisandhi has to be a Kusala Vipaka, and if the Chuti also is a Kusala Vipaka, how could the Patisandhi, the next immediate Patisandhi happens in a woeful realm? So that's why it should be known that the karma which gets the opportunity at the moment of death decides our next life, not the Chuti Chitta. Not the Chitta. Out of them, if you remember, think about this 75. In this 75, we reduce 10 Vijnana and 4 Arupa Vipaka. Why Arupa Vipaka is not producing Chittaja Rupas, I shall discuss it in the next day. Right? Why is that? For Arupa Vipaka are here. So we have to exclude this. Therefore, in our topic, we are concerned about 15 Patisandhi Chittas only. We are concerned about 15 Patisandhi Chitta, excluding the 4 Arupa. Now the question is, why do the commentators, and on some occasions sub-commentators, say that these Patisandhi Chittas and Chuti Chittas are not capable of producing Chittaja Rupas? That's the topic here. It's a delicate topic, that's why I'm taking time. So first we need to understand why a Chitta gets the capacity. It's because of these conditions. And a arising moment, why it gets during the arising moment? Because of it is strong. Because it's strong at the moment. Strong. S-T-R-O-N-G, right? Strong. Because it's strong at that moment. So what does this implicitly say? The strength of the Chitta does matter. Strength of the Chitta. Jnanangas also makes the Chitta stronger because it gives us a good focus. As I explained that day, when a beam of laser is pointed towards a smaller area, if you reduce the surface area of the laser beam, more power it can produce. So likewise, the consciousness is more powerful when it is with jhana factors, which increases the focus, which increases the attentiveness of the consciousness. And then the consciousness is stronger at the arising moment. At the arising moment. And the Chittaja Rupas that are produced by Javana Chittas can even make movements. Avajana Chitta and Javana Chitta. Manodvara Avajana and Javana Chitta. Actually, Javana Chittas are more responsible in that regard. So why is that? The Javana Chitta is more stronger than other Chittas. The strength of the Chitta, Chetasika group, the cluster, is proportionally related to the strength or nature of the Chittaja Rupas. It is also mentioned in the Patthana commentaries, when the Vipaka Chittas are producing Chittaja Rupas, Vipaka Chittas doesn't have the strong strength like that of Javana Chittas. We call they are effortless, Nirutsaha Chitta. It is not to say that it doesn't have Chetana. It is not produced by an effort on that moment. It is produced by a force of the karma that was done in the past. So therefore, Chitta is greatly, the strength of the Chitta, the nature of the Chitta is greatly related to the nature of the Chittaja Rupas. That's the point that we need to keep in mind here. If the Chitta is stronger, Chittaja Rupas have a higher capacity. If Chitta is weaker, Chittaja Rupas have a lower capacity. Now think, Chitta in the vanishing period, vanishing moment, do not produce Chittaja Rupas. Why is that? It's weak. It produces Chittaja Rupas only during the arising period. It's not capable of producing Chittaja Rupas during the weak period, during the vanishing period. One can bring a different argument to that point, but I'm not going to touch on that, because is it that the Chitta is not capable of producing during the vanishing period, or Chitta produces Chitta? Chitta already has the capacity to produce Chitta Rupa, but it produces only in the arising moment. So that's the two arguments that we can bring. One can also say if it has the capacity to produce Chitta Rupas, in both the occasions, should have produced on both the occasions. But when you bring the Mula Tika's argument, the things can differ. So we're not going into that point, but detail. But just to keep in mind, if the Chitta was too weak, it would not be able to produce Chitta Rupas. That is the point here. Stronger Chittas are capable of producing Chitta Rupas. Weaker Chittas are capacity reduces, and that's the reason why the 10 Vijnanas doesn't produce Chitta Rupas. They are weak. They don't have jhana factors here, in that sense. So, now if we say Patisandhi Chitta and Chuti Chitta do not produce Chitta Rupas, so we have to prove that they are weak Chittas in that regard. They are weak. So, in what sense are they weak? Surely they are very powerful Chittas. Patisandhi means a new birth. Right? Think about the Buddha's Bodhisattva Patisandhi. You have to consider it was a very strong, powerful Chitta, obviously, right? Right? It's the beginning of a life. So, in what sense this Chitta is weak? That we need to understand. For that, we should go to analyze the Chittas. Now, think this as the life, Patisandhi, the first Chitta. It arises and passes away. Then arises Bhavanga, BH. Similar Chittas follow. Then we have Avajana Chittas, AV, Javana Chittas, few Chittas, Javanas. Then we have Bhavangas. Finally, we have Chuti. Chuti. Finally, we have Chuti. Think about, now we are going to separate these two, Patisandhi and Chuti. Patisandhi and Chuti. This is during the course of the life. This is the death, this is the birth moment, death moment and birth moment. Now, according to this explanation, Chittas are stronger due to the support they gain from the previous chitta. That is the one thing. And also some other factors. One very vital factor for this to decide the strength of the chitta is its base. This is the point that we are bringing now. The base. Nature of the base does matter in the procedure production of chittaja rupa. So if we draw it here, the base, the nature of the base, in Pali we call vattu rupa. Vattu rupa has a huge effect to the nature of the mental cluster that produces chittaja rupa. Now what we are doing is we are analyzing the nature of this vattu rupa. Then we find out at the moment of patisandhi and chuti, this vattu rupa is weak. So as a result, chitta and chetasikas that are associated in that kind of a vattu is not capable of producing chittaja rupas. That is the argument. That is the point here. That's the approach here. That's the logic we are following here. The rupa upon which the chitta is depending is very weak, so it doesn't give the necessary support for the mentalities to produce chittaja rupas. So our aim in the today's lecture is to analyze why the vattu rupa, the heart base or the base, is weak during the patisandhi and chuti moments. So if we can prove within the doctrine that they are quite weak other than the other occasions, so we can come into a logical argument. It is true or it is logical to assume that the patisandhi chitta and chuti chittas do not produce chittaja rupas during their existence. So that is the point here. So if we move back. Now patisandhi chitta associate a vattu rupa. Bhavanga chittas also associate. Every chitta associate vattu rupa during the Panchavokara realm. Even the chuti chitta. So what are the nature of these vattu? Now we'll go into the now. In order to understand this lesson, we have to bring lots of fundamentals into one place. Now, during which occasion the rupa is stronger? Is it genesis, persisting, or vanishing? It's the persisting moment, the titikala. Patisandhi is the first arising in a certain life. If we are born, it means, what does it mean? If we are born means we have died in the past life, right? Chuti. That's for sure. If someone has died from a human life to another, born to another human life, while we are celebrating the conception of a child, in a one house, there's a funeral going on. Right? So when someone's child is born, if it was a human to human rebirth happening, right? So when someone is born as a child, so they are celebrating the 10-month anniversary of a dead person somewhere in the world, right? So that's the reality, that's the truth. So what we have to consider is, yes, someone is born, surely he has died in whatever realm he was before. It cannot be the first life according to Buddhist teachings, right? So in the same way, if someone has died, we have to consider now he's born somewhere, right? We may be crying, but he has got a new birth. Maybe he delights in that new birth. That's what happened to the queen, who the king loved so much, but at the end she was born as a insect, and she was attached to her new husband. And while the king was mourning for 7 days, and when he got to know this, then he said he discarded the body. So that's another point, that if we are writing patisandhi, always keep in mind a chuti has happened in the past life. Now, patisandhi means the first arising of nama rupa in a particular life. Together with patisandhi, all the kamaja rupas arise in that life. So kamaja rupas, the first kamaja rupas and the patisandhi rupas arise together at the same time. So both are at the moment of genesis. They are genesis. Vattu Rupas are weaker, are not stronger during the arising moment. So they do not produce Chittaja Rupas. Sorry. So they are not stronger. Sorry, beg your pardon. They are not stronger during the genesis. They are strong in the persisting period. Now Patisandhi Chitta, if it produces Chittaja Rupas, it should do it during its genesis moment. Right? Arising moment. That's the fundamental. Now it is associating a weak heart base in that sense during its arising period. It's associating a weak heart base during its arising period. That's the point. So due to this weakness, because the Rupa is stronger, gets all the support during its persisting phase. If this is the arising phase, first is persisting and vanishing phase, the Rupa gets the support of few things. Tejo Dhatu, then Oja, Jivitindriya, and the Chitta, in terms of Pachajata. Chitta also supports the Rupa. During the persisting, actually this happens, we should say, during the persisting period. During the persisting period. So, Rupa is weaker in the genesis. Nothing to say about the vanishing. Is the decaying, the end of decaying, vanishing. So, Patisandhi Chitta is associating a Rupa which is weak. It would exist, which is weak at that moment. So what happens? Associating a weak heart base, Patisandhi doesn't get the capacity to produce Chittaja Rupas. If any Chitta is associating a strong heart base, the Chitta becomes stronger. If it is associating weak heart base, the Chitta is weaker. That's also what happens during oppressed period, physically oppressed time. The Chitta is weaker. When the body is sick, we do not have strong consciousness. Our mind doesn't work properly. Right? When the mind is, while we are sick or when we have a headache, if someone comes and asks you Abhidhamma question about this and this, only thing the anger would arise, right? Because the mind is not working at that moment. We will not be able to answer the questions properly. So, therefore, since the weakness of the Hadevattu is detrimental to the Patisandhi Chitta. That's the point here. It's detrimental to the Patisandhi Chitta. To the detrimental to the strength of the Patisandhi Chitta. As a result, Patisandhi Chitta is not producing any Chittaja Rupas. That is the fundamental here. Then we come into, now the commentators say, gives us such a statement. If the Patisandhi Chitta associate a Vattu Rupa that has arisen before that, if it associate a Vattu Rupa that has arisen before that, it means which has been already existing, the Patisandhi Chitta could have or could produce Chittaja Rupas. It could produce Chittaja Rupas. So there are a few other reasons the commentators have given on this regard. Why Patisandhi Chitta is not capable of producing Chittaja Rupa. But it seems like the support given by the heart base is more prominent here. So that's why I'm focusing on one aspect only. The support given by the heart base to the consciousness. The support given by the heart base to the consciousness. If that support is not sufficient, the Patisandhi Chitta is not capable of producing Chittaja Rupas. Right? It's not capable of producing Chittaja Rupas. Now think about all the other occasions. Just close to, except the time close to the death. This may be the death moment and close to the death, for example. If you leave apart these two, all the other occasions, Chitta is associating a heart base that has arisen one mind moment before it. That has arisen one mind moment before. So these heart bases have already passed their weak period. They have already passed their weak period. These consciousness are arising based on a stronger heart base. Strong. They have passed their weak period. All the other occasions, except very close to the death, during the end of the Patisandhi moment, Chitta always associates a heart base that has already arisen. That has already arisen. So this is Bhavanga, for example. So there is this heart base has passed its weak. What is the weak moment? Genesis. The Chitta associates the strongest, the most possible strongest heart base. So it associates a heart base that has immediately entered into the persisting phase. Immediately it enters into the persisting phase, the Chitta arises depending on it. Chitta arises depending on it. So all these Chittas get a support of a stronger heart base. This is valid, this phenomenon is valid for all the other consciousness, except the Patisandhi, Chutti and close to Chutti. So as a result, all these Chittas, since they are associating a strong heart base, not a weak heart base, they have the capacity to produce Chitta. Patisandhi Chitta is associating a weak heart base. That's the point here. I hope you get this point. Right? So Patisandhi Chitta is associating a weak heart base, while the other Chittas are associating a strong heart base. So they get the capacity to produce Chitta Rupas. Right? So that's the point that we have mentioned in the first few paragraphs. Then we go into the final Chitta. What about this Chuti Chitta? Chuti Chitta. Chuti Chitta is associating a heart base during its vanishing period. During its vanishing period, the last moment. According to Mulatika, the entire Chuti Chitta associate the vanishing period, because vanishing period takes a one mind moment, according to Mulatika. According to Abhidhamma committee, it's just a one sub-mind moment. Even here, if we follow the Mulatika's explanation, it's very clear to explain. Because the genesis of a Rūpa is equal to one mind moment. Right? If we take the commentaries, it's just one sub-mind moment. I prefer the Mulatika's explanation on this regard at this moment. Right? So anyway, somehow it is a weak, whatever method we follow, the heart base during its persisting period, vanishing period is weak. Why do we say it's in the vanishing period? Because this is the Chuti. Chuti means the death. That's the end of the life. That's the end of the story actually. So then, if none is Arahant, a Patisandhi is going to happen. This is the moment. All the Kamaja Rupas and Chitta Chaitasikas are going to stop in our life. Kamaja Rupas are not going to continue after this. No. That's the end. So, the heart base that associates the Chuti Chitta is also in its dying moment, the last moment. It's a weak moment. Now, if you look at this chart again, now this is the genesis. This is the persisting moment of a Rūpa, and this is the vanishing moment of a Rūpa. Vanishing is also weak. What do you think? What is the weaker moment? Genesis or vanishing? Obviously, it should be vanishing, right? Genesing is a plus thing, like past force is going on. It's arising. So, if you compare these two moments, vanishing is weaker than the genesis. The moment the Rūpa is weaker during the vanishing because it's deteriorating. Its strength is going down. It's in the weakening phase. Vanishing, we can say the end of decaying. End of mean the culmination of decaying. When a thing decays and fully decays, it means gone. Right? That's death. So now it's weaker. So the Chuti Chitta is associating a very weak heart base. Very weak heart base. It has existed. It has existed. Right? It has existed. We normally say the same thing that has been existing. The strong period has passed away. It's in the weak area. So the close to death, 17 consciousness, the last 17 consciousness associate the same heart base. Why is that? Just 17 mind moments before death, Kamma stops producing Kammaja Rupas. Why is that? The Patisandhi Kamma is not going to, is exhausted or it is prevented, whatever means, whatever way, it's not going to give results anymore. So it has stopped producing Chitta Rupas. So we are certain to die when the Kamma stops the production of Chitta Rupas. There's no one who can stop this. When the Patisandhi Kamma, which gave our Patisandhi, stops producing Kammaja Rupas, not Chitta Rupa, I beg your pardon. When it stops producing Kammaja Rupas, in another 17 mind moments, the being is sure to die. It's a tragedy, right? You can see now if the Kamma has stopped, no one can save you. Before that, yes, we are weakening, medicine and something can be brought up and some kind of approach, and then maybe we may be able to make him to live, he or she to live. But when the Patisandhi Kamma has stopped producing Chittaja Rupas, Kammaja Rupas, that is an indicator that the person is surely going to die. So what happens when the Patisandhi Kamma has stopped producing Kammaja Rupas, the already existing Kammaja Rupas has to be associated by the remaining Chittas. But all the other occasions, since Kammaja Rupas are produced at every sub-mind moment or every mind moment, according to whatever method we follow, it's continuously arising. Chittas are capable of associating the stronger heart base. So in these occasions, consciousness does not associate the same heart base. There are few occasions the consciousness has to associate the same heart base. That is last 17 mind moments. And there's another moment. What is that? The first and second Chitta. Have you ever thought about this? First Chitta associate the first heart base. Second Chitta also associate the second heart, because heart base is stronger on the persisting moment. Chitta always associate a heart base that has arisen one mind moment before. So what is the heart base that the second consciousness is associating? The same heart base. Right? So in that regard, if we make it like a proper diagram, actually, this may differ from the commentarial explanation, but it matches with the sub-commentarial explanation. So I'll just correct this part. The same heart base is in the weak state, strong. So the Patisan Chitta associating the weak heart base, while the second Chitta is associating the strong heart base. Associating the same heart base happens on two occasions, close to death, immediately after Patisandhi. Right? I hope you got the point. Right? But in this regard, this Chitta is associating a stronger heart base, because Patisandhi is getting the weaker heart base. Second Bhavanga is getting a stronger heart base. But with regard to the end moment, the proceeding Chittas, not the preceding ones, the proceeding Chittas are getting a weaker and a weaker heart base. So at this moment, heart base is very weak. No doubt about that. What are the reasons for this weakness? Why this heart base is weak? One reason is the Kamma, Patisandhi Kamma is about to vanish. Is not supporting enough. Not enough support. Because it's going to stop now. Especially at the last moment, it's not giving maybe it may give some support, it may be giving some support, surely it should be, but not enough support for the continuation. The Patisandhi Kamma is finishing its work. Right? Finishing is now, if someone has done a course in a certain institute, okay, the last moment is like saying goodbye, right? It's ending the cause. Patisandhi Kamma is finishing its cause. What was its cause? To give this life. The responsibility is done. It produces an entire life. And now it's ending. A new person, a new successive person is getting the the new option. Like, so that's also something very important. Think about the Patisandhi Kamma. It gave Patisandhi Kamma, not the Chitta I'm talking. So till the Chuti, Patisandhi Kamma is starting from Patisandhi till Chuti. It is responsible till the end. But before this Patisandhi Kamma got the opportunity, before the last Chuti. So likewise, a new Kamma, new Patisandhi Kamma gets the opportunity during the life itself, and then it produces the new Patisandhi. This is a period. This is a period. The Patisandhi Kamma is still operating. A new Kamma also has got the power, occasion to give a new life. Think about the American president, right? After the election is won, how many? I think 3 months, right? The incumbent president works for 3 months while the new president-elect taking the new administration. So both are working at the same time. Both are working. So the president, we normally say, it becomes a lame duck. The president incumbent is a lame duck. Like he does have the executive powers, right, to some extent. Executive, as far as you know, I'm not an expert in the American Constitution actually. So he has some powers. Like the transition period is going on. Both the presidents are there. So we normally say in the president-elect, the day the president goes away from the White House, that's the day normally the president is given the oaths, the new president-elect. So likewise, the new Kamma gets the Patisandhi when the last Kamma finishes its course. But there is a period where both Kammas are working now. It has not produced the Chuti yet, next Patisandhi yet. It doesn't have the executive powers to produce the new life yet. Still the past Kamma is in control. Right? Still the past Kamma is in control. Anyway, so the past Kamma, since it's weakening, its support is not that much. Support is not that much. Patisandhi Kamma. Then, what about Jivitindriya and Kammaja Tejo? Throughout this entire period, the Rūpa was supported by Jivitindriya Rūpa and the Kammaja Tejo. We already discussed these matters in detail. Jivitindriya not only supports the Kammaja process, but the entire body. Kammaja Tejo also supports the entire body. It supports the entire body. But now, after 17 mind moments before death, the Kammaja Rūpa production has stopped. So there is no new Kammaja Kammaja Tejo or new Jivitindriya is being produced. So already existing Tejo and Jivitindriya are also weakening now. There's no new addition to the bulk. So the ones who are there are also weakening now. What happens? The support given by the Jivitindriya and Kammaja Tejo, the support is reducing. Support is lessening gradually. Now we are talking about the weakness of the Hadevatu. Okay? No, the Patisandhi Kamma, the support is weakening. Jivitindriya and Tejo Dhatu, Kammaja Tejo Dhatu support also weakening, lessening. So the Vattu is weakening. The third point, the Vattu itself is decaying. Because no new Vatturupas have arisen. This is the Vatturupa that has arisen 17 mind moments before. So it's in the decaying process. It itself is decaying. Unlike the other occasions, the Jivitindriya and Tejodhatu is not giving any support, not giving enough support. Patisandhi Kamma is also not giving enough support to the body. So what happens? The Chuti Chitta gets to associate a very, very weak Hadevatu. And during it, it's also in the vanishing period, not like the genesis period during the Patisandhi. So when you consider all these conditions, it seems Chuti Chitta is associating a weaker heart base than that of the Patisandhi. It's a weaker heart base, much weaker heart base. We can call very weak heart base. As a result, what happened? The weak heart base could not give the Patisandhi the capacity to produce Chittaja Rupas. So nothing to say the very weak heart base at the moment of death, when there is no enough support of the Kammaja, Patisandhi Kamma, the Jivitindriya Tejojatu support is lacking, reducing, and since it has decayed greatly, so this heart base does not give the capacity for the Chittaja Rupas. It is not a reason for the Chuti Chitta, does not give the capacity for the Chuti Chitta to produce Chittaja Rupa. So that is the argument here. One can bring an argument, even at the Patisandhi moment, the Tejo, the Kamma, the Tejo and Jivitindriya support is not given. That's true. But here, it's at the moment of vanishing, the decaying. Here, the decaying has not started yet. That's another point. Patisandhi Kamma is giving a very good support from the birth. Here, its support is reducing. So therefore, it seems like the Patisandhi, which Chuti Chitta associating weaker heart base than the Patisandhi. So as a result, what happens? Chuti Chitta also does not produce Chittaja Rupa. Right? Chittaja Rupa. That's the point. So this idea has been mentioned in the Mula Tika, stating that the Paramattha Dipani has elaborated this point. So I have given you a detailed explanation. You can go through it and get the idea. So then Anutika suggests, referring to the phrase in Yamaka, now think about the 17 mind moments before death. 17 consciousness before Chuti. The Kammaja Rupa process stops, right? So now the entire Chitta, 17 Chittas that are arising here are associating a gradually weakened heart base. So, and according to Patthana, it is mentioned that Asasa Passasa, that is breath, doesn't pass away with the Chuti Chitta. So normally we think the final breath and the death happens together. According to Yamaka, no. The final consciousness, together with the final consciousness, no breath passes away. Kaya Sankhara na nirujjati with Chuti Chitta. So based on that, if any Asasa Passasa to pass away at this moment, it has to arise at least 17 mind moments before, right? To have passed away at this moment, because after this there is no passing away. If the last Asasa Passasa to pass away at this moment, it has to at least arise 17 mind moments before. If this is negated, this also should be negated. So the Anutika suggests none of these rupas are producing Asasa Passasa. It's a very fine argument, right? So based on that, it suggests, yes, if no Asasa Passasa, it means no Chittaja Rupa. So according to that, Anutika suggests it's not only the last consciousness that doesn't produce Chittaja Rupa, but the last 17 do not produce Chittaja Rupas. Right? Last 17. Then Lady Sia is a bit suspicious about this occasion, on this opinion. He says, it's just about Asasa Passasa. Asasa Passasa is a very gross Chittaja Rupa. So you cannot come to the conclusion that the subtle Chittarupas are not passing away at that moment. So he doesn't prefer this idea. But we have to say that Anutika is of such an opinion. His claim is not denied by the commentarial explanations, by the doctrinal explanations. So according to Anutika, none of the last 17 Chittas produce Chittarupas. He comes to the conclusion based on a phrase in the Yamaka Pali. Right, phrase on the Yamaka Pali. Then what is the commentary's explanation? Commentary says, Chutti-chitta of other non-arahants do produce, but of the arahants, Chutti-chitta doesn't produce. Why is that? According to the commentaries, of a non-arahant, even of anagamis, the nama-rupa process continues after death. So there is a lineage going on. Lineage is going on. So therefore, as a result, Chutti-chittas do produce Chitta-rupas, since the lineage is continuing. Mulatika and Anutika are against of this opinion. They say, yes, there is a lineage connection from mind to mind, but not from Rūpa to Rūpa. So that argument is not valid, according to that. Right? Since the commentators say, yes, non-arahants Chutti produce Chitta-rupa. What is the reason? The linear connections. I shall read this, 160. The Abhidhamma commentary has a different opinion on this issue. According to it, the death consciousness only of arahants do not produce Chitta-rupas. Chutti-chitta of non-arahants do produce mind-born matter. The reason given in the commentary is the fact that nama-rupa processes of a non-arahant would continue even after death, but such continuation is not found at the death of an arahant. Since there is no connection between the generation of rupas in two different lives, as in the case of namas, both Mulatika and Anutika do not appreciate this idea. It's up to you to decide whether to follow the commentarial explanation or to go with the sub-commentarial explanation. But my duty is to give you the information that is found here. I am not in a position to give a conclusion here, because such renowned erudite scholars have seen it in different ways. So even Lady Sayadaw has just not given strong opinions on that, but have listed down the information, because every party has their own evidences based on the doctrinal evidences, and these things I don't think we can experimentally prove, right? So just for our intellectual capacity, and that do help our vipassana, because when we are thinking on such way, our understanding about causality, understanding about the non-selfness starts to increase, because we are talking about just mind moments, matter, support given and all these, the conditionality and all these. So it increases our understanding and gives a very good strong basis for our vipassana practice. So that's why these things need to be discussed when we are studying the Theravada doctrine thoroughly. So that's it. So I have done my lecture. Our topic was to show why, out of the 75 chittas, why Patisandhi and Chutti are incapable of producing Chitta-rupa. That is due to the weakness. Why that weakness? Who has caused that weakness? They are associating heart base. If you are associating someone, please remember, his or her influence does matter to your strength. So always associate people who strengthens you, not the ones who weakens you. It's a very good example. Even the Patisandhi Chitta, the beginning of our life, cannot produce Chitta-rupas because of associating as weaker heart base. So if you can bring this as an example for Kalyana Mitta, even a person, the commentators say, the commentator's idea is, if had it associated a heart base that has arisen before it, it means a strong heart base, it would have produced Chitta-rupas. So Mahadana Setti, had he associated good friends, instead of not studying and living a lavish life or squandering his money, had he associated good friends, he would have been the #1 millionaire or the rich man, or even become a noble being. But due to associating bad friends and living an uneducated life, not learning something, he ended up in the woeful, hells actually, not in a normal woeful realm, in a hell. So likewise, the association does matter. So Patisandhi Chitta and Chuti Chitta doesn't have the capacity to produce Chitta Rupas because of the nature of its dependence. That is the Hadevatu. Hadevatu on those two occasions are weak due to various reasons that we have discussed so far. And therefore, they doesn't produce Chitta Rupas. Commentary is of a different opinion. It's not all the, with regard to Patisandhi Chitta, there is no arguments. Regarding the Chuti Chitta, it's of the Arahants Chuti Chitta that does not produce Chitta Rupas, but non-Arahants does produce. So that's the argument going on. So it's up to you to give more insight and deep thought and to accept whatever the notion which you like. Right? So this is the explanation. This shows how Chitta is depending upon conditions. Strength of the Chitta depends on its associating jhana factors and so forth. Even at the arising moment, which is under a phenomenon, the Chitta itself, no one can make a Chitta strong at the vanishing moment. So it's under the phenomenon. So certain natures, qualities are because of the phenomenon. Certain natures are because of the association. Certain natures are because of the dependence. Now here, weak base makes a Chitta weak. Strong bases make Chitta stronger. Right? So likewise, so this gives us more understanding or enlightenment with regard to causality and how causes are defining or how causes are molding the quality of the conditioned realities. And this also gives us understanding about the non-self. There is no self who is governing this entire life and living its own life as it wishes. No. Things are molded based on the conditions greatly. So it's out of control. Control means if we come into the idea that there is no control in decision making, it's a huge dangerous statement. There is no control of the continuation or the existence or the sustenance of these nama rupa processes. So surely it will pass away and it will arise based on the conditions. Right? And it's not to say that there is no control in decision making. If we come to that level, then things would be either random or determined. So that we should not, a path, I personally believe that a path that we should not take as Buddhists. So that would be the lecture, and I open the forum for the Q&A session.
The question is, thank you very much, Bhante, for the informative Dhamma lecture. Sadhu, sadhu. My questions are, what are the functions of Citta Rupa apart from the five? Smile, cry, talk, posture, vinyati. If none, can we use the theory of necessity to explain why Patisandhi and Chuti do not produce Citta Rupa? Simply because not needed. Another is the 75 can produce but not necessarily will produce Citta Rupa if conditions are not provided, right? If so, what are the conditions? Is there any proof for Sampatichana to produce Citta Rupa? Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you for your question, sister. Uttama, she's Panya Sobani, I think. So,
Uttama.
Yeah, Sialatwa. So, thing is like it's other than the physical bodily movements, crying, laughing, and so forth. There are few other reasons why Chitta Rupas are arising. We shall be discussing them in the further lectures. I'm not going to give a descriptive explanation on this. In coming lectures, surely you will be learning many aspects of Chitta Rupas. So don't worry about that. So there are many other reasons. So it is a necessity law that all Chitta consciousness produces Chitta Rupas. That is the nature of the necessity. The law of necessity is every consciousness produces Chitta Rupa. That's the necessity. Why is that? We shall discuss later. But there are special occasions where this Chitta, due to lacking some basic fundamental needs or fundamental strengths, it cannot produce Chittaja Rupas. So the fundamental is Chitta is producing Chittaja Rupas all the time. Right? It's not only for smiling and all this, for the sustenance of the body, right? And also, I think there is a relationship with the mind and the body. We shall analyze them later on. And Chitta directly affects the Rupa through Pachadata Pachaya, and also it affects the Rupa through Chittaja Rupas. That's why especially we can see in meditation, the body is appeased, or body feels very comfortable with a high exalted mind. A different opposite effect is felt when the mind is unwholesome. And during the sleeping process, Chittaja Rupas produced by Bhavanga Chittas are very calm. So it refines the body. So Chittaja Rupas do have many functions actually. It's not only movements that we are talking. So the necessity is all the Chittas must produce Chittaja Rupas. But in the Arupa realm, some fundamental conditions are lacking. 10 Vijnana are lacking the jhana factors. Patisandhi and Chuttichittas are lacking a strong base. So these are the reasons why some Chittaja Rupa are not produced. Some Chittas are not producing Chittaja Rupas. So nothing, it's the other way around. It's the other way around, that Chittaja Rupas are produced only on certain occasions. So Patisandha, Chutti doesn't need it. No, the other way around. All Chittas should produce Chittaja Rupas. But due to the lacking of some fundamental conditions, some are not producing Chittaja Rupas. That is the basic answer for this question. Then some Patichana Chitta, yes, we have information. I'll give you later on. We'll be analyzing what kind of Chittas produce Chittaja Rupas. So then, what else? That's it, right? Yeah. Last, can you go up? Patisandha and Chutti, yes, up. Okay. But do not, if... Is there any book for but yeah, that I'll give you with reference later on. In the handouts I have written, I don't have it actually. Yeah, so yeah. Yeah, it's a really good question. Thank you for your question, and things will be much clearer when we finish the topic subheading for the Chittaja Rupas. Yeah, we can go to the next question.
Thank you. May I ask my question, Professor?
Yeah.
When one is treated with knowing well that he or she had to pay his attention well, but suddenly fall asleep and he can't uphold his bodily positions correctly. I think it is because of the Chittaja Rupas produced by the vanishing part of the Chitta.
No, it's because of the Chittaja Rupas produced by the Bhavanga Chittas. Doesn't have the capacity to uphold the posture that has already been upheld by the previous Chittas. That we shall learn later on. That is not because of Chittaja Rupas being produced in the vanishing moment. It is because of the Chittaja Rupas produced by the Bhavanga Chitta, which doesn't have the capacity to produce Chittaja Rupas which can uphold the bodily posture. So we can learn that later.
Okay. But when one is meditating, fully absorbed, meditating, we can see those persons like statues, and they can uphold the body postures well, and I think it is the strong
Chittas. Yeah, so we divide it like Chittas which can do physical movements, Chittas which can uphold the bodily postures, the Chittas which cannot uphold the bodily postures. So there are 3 categories of Chittas we shall learn in another few lectures. So during meditation, always the Javana Chittas that have the capacity, even though he's focusing at the breath, Chittaja Rupas are capable of maintaining the bodily posture. So due to that, as long as it doesn't fall into sleep, the bodily posture would remain. Even while we are thinking something else, but still we can stand and do that, right? While we are looking at the stars or thinking about the heavens or something. So still our bodily postures would be remain. While we are working on some other work, our attention is given to the work, but still the bodily postures are maintained. So this is because of the Javana Chitta especially happening during our awakened period. So even during a sleep, we normally don't make bodily movements. In some sleeps we do. So those Javana Chittas during the sleep mostly are weak. So for that we need to explain the level of the consciousness as well. It's a complicated thing. Some understanding would be gained during the Rūpa chapter. When we complete the entire course, we will be able to get a bigger picture about all this information.
Okay, thank you. Theravada
Theravada.
One thing like the Rūpa of the Kamaja Rūpa of the Padisandhi, that Kaya, Bhava and Hadaya. So it, especially this Bhava Rūpa or Hadaya, it stays same up to Chuti, or it can change. If it did change, how we can know especially this Hadaya and Bhava. Especially Kaya, we can know the changing of the Kaya. But Hadaya and the Bhava changing of how we can.
Also, what do you mean by changing of Hadaya and Kaya? I didn't get the point.
Like changing is right now because Kaya like the Kamajarupa, others Kamajarupa, we can see through our eyes the change of the body change through like that. So like for Bhava Rūpa and Hadaya.
Hadaya. It's. I think it remains as not the same Rūpa, but the amount of the Hadaya. You mean like the body changes, right? It grows up. The eye grows up, right? So what is the heart base? The where it is located in the heart? Yes, it's not the physical heart. It is a subtle Rūpa inside the heart, according to Theravada teachings. So just this base. The space is occupies the amount of heart bases. Does it increase or stays the same? That I am unable to give you an answer for that to be true. Maybe the amount of heart bases inside the heart may increase the amount quantitatively. Maybe it stays same. I'm not sure about that. But Bhava Rūpa does change, yes. The amount of Bhava Rūpas increase with the growth of the body, and also male Bhava Rūpas may convert into female Bhava Rūpas. It's not the same Bhava Rūpa converting into another Bhava Rūpa. The generation of Bhava Rūpas changes. The male Bhava Rūpas generation, the generation in which male Bhava Rūpas were occurring changes into a female Bhava Rūpa generation. And I have given a lecture on this. If you go to the Kamaj Rūpa lectures, I am not sure whether we have named them, titled them properly, but few lectures away, if someone can put it in the chat box in our YouTube channel, we have how the sex change, spontaneous sex change within the land life happens in the Bhava Rūpa. I have given 3 or 4 lectures on that. So in one lecture we have discussed about sex change within one life. So it does happen. It can happen for the Bhava Rūpa. Hadaya, there is no such a change like that in Bhava, but whether the quantity, the amount of Hadaya Vattus, the number increases or not, I am unable to give you an answer for that, because I don't think there is any evidence or information in the literature about this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Welcome also.
Good morning, Pandit.
Morning.
So may I ask if the person who attends the Nirodha Samapatti, so in that case, because generally we say even the Chitta also stopped, right?
Chitta stops, yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, before we talk about the gross level or subtle level?
Even subtle, no Chitta at all. Sanya Vedaita, because its subtle level is attained by the Neva Sanya Na Sanyayatana. So we are making, there's no way to make it more subtle. So I think I explained this in the beginning lectures of the first series of Paramatta Dhammas, Paramattas, that we make the jhana factors reduced, and then we change the object and gradually subtle the object, and when we come to the neva sanya na sanyayatana, the chitta is very, very subtle, very, very subtle. So he is very aware of the object that he is focusing at, but after he emerges from the jhana, it is very difficult for him to recall back whether to find out the consciousness. It's very difficult to focus at that consciousness because it's very it is very subtle. So Nirodha Samapatti is a stage ahead this. So in Nirodha Samapatti, according to the Theravada teachings, there is no consciousness at all. There is no consciousness at all. So if there is no consciousness, there is no production of Chitta Rupas.
Yeah, because in literature sometimes, how do we know when the commentators or sub-commentators will talk about the Chitta Jamba, how do we know they're talking about the gross level or subtle level?
If now the Sanya Vedaita Nirodha, it says the Sanya and Vedana is Nirodha, cessation. So obvious answer is like it's not no there. If there was a subtle kind of a thing, that would be the commentator's duty to explain why there is a subtle Rūpa or subtle Nama, while the Buddha has explained it is no more. So Sanya Vedaita Nirodha itself says Vedayita is Vedana, Sanya is Sanya, Sanya and Vedana are Nirodha. When Sanya and according to Vedala Sutta, Mahavedala Sutta, Sanya, Chitta, Panya, these things cannot be separated. Like they are always, especially Sanya, Chitta are connected with each other. If there is no Sanya, there cannot be any Chitta. If there is no Chitta, no mentality at all. So that is a normal explanation in the teachings. So the bringing of maybe someone would bring the subtle idea because of some sutras that says that Nama Rupa is interdependent. So how could there be the Rupa only during a certain period without the Nama? Yes, that is a good argument. Bringing from the Nalakalapi Sutta or some other sutras to show that the consciousness has to exist for the Nama to sustain. Yes, I reckon it as a good argument, but since the teachings clearly says that the Sanya and Vedana is Nirodha during the Samapatti, so the initial fundamental would be there will be no Chitta rather than going into subtle or gross level.
Okay, thank you so much, Pandit.
So then we'll conclude the lecture. Thank you for your questions. They were very good questions. So we shall continue with this lecture. Next day I'm going to talk why Arupa Vipaka is not producing any Chittaja Rupas and why there are no Chittaja Rupas in the Arupa realm, and also some other factors such as some subtle points related to Chittaja Rupas would also be discussed. Some information will also be given. Okay. Thank you for listening, and wish you all the best, and may this merit of studying Dhamma, maybe all be able to practice and understand Dhamma deeply and attain the Nibbana as soon as possible, and may this merit also be a help for the sustaining of the Buddha Sasana. Buddha Sasanang Chirantithatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantithatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantithatu, Sadhu, Sadhu, Sadhu.